So after my last video, I thought I'd go a little more into my own metaphysical views. Um, so in the ancient world, there was this idea called musica universalis, universal music, um, better known by the term harmony of the spheres, which which in that context tends to be applied more to astrology, where each planet has its own frequency and that they harmonize according to their aspects and so on. But it was also the idea that everything in nature has a frequency. Everything vibrates at a certain level, and there's a kind of harmonization among things in the universe. If everyone knows the equation E equals mc squared, that there's an equivalence between energy and mass. But there's also an equivalence between frequency and mass. So all matter is energy at different frequencies. And so all material interactions are just interactions at different frequencies in complex patterns. And so all matter and energy is vibration. It's all frequency. It's all matter. And of course, so light comes to us at different frequencies, right? So we see different colors and stuff. Sound comes through different frequencies. And so all that we perceive, all that we have is simply different frequencies, different harmonies, different vibrations. And note that our brain works on frequency too. So as our senses take in the frequencies of light and sound, and it's processed in the brain, and our brain works by the firing of neurons, right? And those neurons fire in patterns, and those patterns can change by minute things, by either like the order in which the neurons fire, or the neuron cluster involved, the frequency, the pattern. So there's all this oscillation, and so we have our neurons, our brains, tuning in to the frequencies that we perceive in our senses. Our sensory experience of the world is one of attunement. And so then you get into, memory. And, I've long been a fan of Bergson's theory of memory, in which memory is not, stored in the brain as engrams, but is sort of a sort of presence of the past that's sort of tuned into in the same way that we tune into the environment. Now, and of course, Rupert Sheldrake has taken up this idea in his theory of morphic resonance. But I have since found articles of neuroscientists saying they found engrams in the brain. They found they've taken photos of the formation of a memory in the brain, and I thought, oh well, that's so much for the immaterial understanding of memory. But if you look at what they're calling engrams, they're not physical traces in any sort of material sense. They're neural patterns. It is a sort of memory is recorded as a neural pattern in the brain, and in retrieving a memory, we tune into that neural pattern. And so so that means memory itself is also a matter of attunement. Our brain is a vast tuning instrument. By having this complex neural structure, it's able to tune into a wider array of frequencies than a merely cellular life, right? Our cells themselves are, of course, have DNA, which is patterns of different proteins in a certain arrangement, and that's that the arrangement of those proteins is a frequency, and that frequency is sort of recorded in the protein and manifests in physical changes, right? So neurons and genes, all these are physical substrates for frequencies that are not exactly physical. That form is frequency. And of course, the genes don't act by themselves. They act. They're involved in complex interactions among the cell and the environment. And of course, it's the cell is constantly tuning itself to the environment, just as our brains are. What we have is that we, as embodied organisms, we are constantly tuning ourselves to our surroundings. And furthermore, because our brains are so complex, we can also tune into these things called thoughts. Not non-material things like concepts, in and we've also created a code for communicating these concepts called language, and so by communicating linguistically, we are attempting to kind of fine tune our understanding to one another, right? We even have transcendent experiences of mysticism, of contemplative or meditative experiences, and these involve attuning our brain to frequencies that are not normally accessed in our everyday experience. So we are a complex formation of the universe that has been tuned by evolution to a certain frequency of reality. And we share frequency with other organisms that share that same evolutionary lineage, with other humans who share our physical structure, with others in our culture who share a linguistic understanding with us. There are all these overlapping frequencies in which we interact with one another. And so what I would say is in fact, there is a grand metafrequency that defines the sort of language of the cosmos, which we call logos. So we're constantly, we're unfolding according to the logos. We're always progressing in that direction, and of course we sometimes diverge from that path, and we miss the mark of what's called sin, right? But when we return to what is our telos, our path, we reattune ourselves to that logos. And furthermore, so subordinate to this grand logos, there are different frequencies that form different aspects or different archetypal patterns in our universe. These governing intelligences, or which are also known as angels, or devas, or whatever your religion preaches. That's so each of these archetypal frequencies is something that our religious striving reaches for. And in practicing religious ritual, our rituals are frequencies. They're patterns that we try to enact in order to attune ourselves to this path that's been laid out before us. So it's this constant flow, this constant alternation in pattern, there's also a cultural pattern of give and take between entities, which we call dialectics. So the Hegelian dialectic, the Marxist dialectic, is always this matter of frequency, this sense of give and take that we find between things. And in this frequency, there's in following this frequency of logos, there's this pattern of unfolding. I think evolution, actually in its origin means something like unfolding. There's this consistent iteration. Derrida talked about languages being about iterability, and so it's a constant sense of articulation of the logos in the creation of novelty. And Christopher Alexander, the famous architectural theorist, had a particular point about unfolding as being essential to the organic, to how creation happens. Whereas there's a sort of mechanistic approach to design, which is a machinic, one of imposition, of trying to create big structures rather than a sort of gradual unfolding. And this mechanistic approach, what Louis Mumford called the mega machine, is it goes back to the earliest empires, to Mesopotamia and Egypt, and when there was the first machine made of people, which was the sort of regimentation of slaves and servants to serve the god king, right? But then there's a modern mega machine that's emerged with capitalism that is about where society itself has become this machine, and instead of one sovereign at the helm, it's sort of the machine itself that we serve. And there's a sort of technocratic elite who are sort of at the helm machine, but they themselves are replaceable parts of this machine. The machine is one of dividing people and compartmentalizing and creating this sort of hierarchy. And so we've gone away from the sort of harmonics and unfolding toward a system of blueprints and of technocratic management and of utilitarian calculus. And so I guess I kind of want to end on saying that we are creatures of this vast universal symphony. We are harmonies that harmonize with one another. We are already attuned to one another, and this deviation from that harmony, this dissonance, can be resolved into a greater part of this symphony. And we just have to find that logos, that inner harmony, that order of the universe, and realign with it. There's an article that I wrote for Metapsychosis Journal that I'm going to link below that's up on this subject. I also have kind of adapted that into the first chapter of a book that I'm working on, as yet untitled. But yeah. If you haven't yet, please check out my Substack. And if you'd be so generous, contribute to my Patreon account. Appreciate you. Thanks. Bye.